Right, just testing the audio now. Right, just testing audio now. Okay, let's check the video. Great, that works. Okay, let's check the video. That works. Right, so if everyone can stand by, we will start promptly at 3. Right, so if everyone can stand by, we will start promptly. When you do enter the live stream, just introduce yourself in the chat box, just so I know you're here. Just a reminder, guys, we start promptly at 3, so get your tea or coffee ready, as well as your notes and your resource pack. I have also linked them in the chat. So the webinar will end around 4, and the program should be on your screen right now. Right, is everyone's audio on? Can everyone see me? Okay, then without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to take my headphones off so I won't be able to hear if you guys are chatting with me. Okay, so welcome to this live stream. If you are wondering who I am, my name is Ms. van der Schijf. I am one of the markers for Brainline. I've been working for Brainline for the last 7 years. And I've seen a lot of you go through from grade 8 to all the way to matric. So if you're ever wondering who's the woman marking all of our assessments and writing all those funny things, that's me. So today is not about me, though. Today I want to help you prepare for your exams. Okay, so I want to make sure that you are prepped and ready. I think the grade 8s and 9s write tomorrow, and I think the grade 10s write on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so let's just have a little look here. Okay, so first of all, you have your cup of tea ready, I hope. This helps you concentrate a lot, guys. And then I hope you have either a notebook and pen ready, which works the best for me, and your notes. If you don't have them printed, then hopefully you have them on your computer, because this is how we are going to work with each other today. Okay, let me just put my headphones on because I can't hear if my audio is working. Okay, so is everyone here and ready to start? Okay, great stuff. So the first things I want you guys to look at, let's just have a quick look at the program. I want you to know exactly what I expect of you for today. So this is how it's going to work. So now we're just doing an opening and a welcoming. I did allow a lot more time per item than I think will be necessary, just to be safe. So if it looks like there's a lot of time, don't worry about it. We can rather budget too much time than too little. And then we're going to make sure everyone has resources, and we're just going to make sure we have our resources ready to go. And then we're going to jump right into the lit essay, and we're going to discuss what is the purpose, how do we plan, and what is the procedure. And then we're going to go through each step, one step at a time. And then only when we are done, I'm going to ask you guys to give me questions once we are finished. So when we are done with everything, then you can ask your questions in the chat box. That's mostly because I can't keep an eye on the chat box the whole time. I want to focus on getting the content to you guys as good as possible. So if you have a question, take your pen and your paper or your notebook, write it down, and then you can always just ask me afterwards. I've only allotted 10 minutes, but I really don't mind sitting longer than that, making sure that I've explained everything properly to you guys. Okay, so with all that in mind, and if you now know what our program is for today, I'd like to get straight into everything. So the best way you can do this, is, in my experience, is by actually listening to me while I'm speaking and taking notes, or following on with this resource that I emailed you guys and taking notes on there. But try not to read too much of the resource while I'm talking, because then you're not going to really hear what I have to say on each topic. Your brain is just going to read and not listen. Unfortunately, our brains can't do both at the same time. So what I want to encourage you to do is take notes while I'm speaking. And this is going to help you actively engage with what I'm saying the whole time. So it's a double whammy in that sense. And if anyone is unclear about how anything works, please ask me right now, so I can clarify and we can get straight into everything. All right, so it seems everyone knows exactly what to do based on that. So I'm going to turn my attention away from the chat box and I'm going to jump straight into the literary essay. So grade 8s and 9s, you are writing your mini essay. And if you went to the masterclass, if you attended the masterclass that Ms. Hamilton presented, you will know that for grade 8s, it's on your play, and for grade 9s, it's on your melodrama. And grade 10s, obviously, it's Romeo and Juliet. So you also know that there will be no contextual questions whatsoever, and that every single question will be on an essay. That doesn't mean that you can't go practice the questions in preparation for your exam. It simply means that in your exam, contextuals will not be enough to help you prepare for it. Okay. So let's take a look. Okay, just realize as we're going along, I'm very used to a class of 35 kids sitting in front of me, constantly making noise. So this complete silence is actually very strange to me. So if I do tend to gather my thoughts a bit every now and then, just bear with me. The silence is, like I said, I'm not used to it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about before we go into purpose, planning, and procedure is I want to talk about the 3 areas that you guys struggle in. And I want you to write this down. I'm going to explain to you why they are struggle areas and why you guys often find it difficult, and hopefully a solution to that problem. Okay, so the first thing you guys struggle with in the lit essay is that you don't know the essay well enough. You don't know the essay well enough. So, sorry, not the essay. You don't know your content well enough. So you struggle to put that into an essay. If you don't know your content well enough, you are not going to be able to write an essay. So what I want you to do, in order for you to know the content, I want you to read the book at least once, obviously. If you have the opportunity to read it again, then do that. If you have the opportunity to perhaps go see a play that you are studying live, then go do that, because that's going to help you understand the text in front of you. And I also just want to note that a lot of kids think they can just read the Spark Notes and that'll be sufficient. Unfortunately, it really is not. And I'll explain why when I talk about purpose, why just going through Spark Notes is not enough. Okay, the second area that you guys struggle with is you don't understand the question. So in an essay question, we'll usually have a statement, and you need to react to that statement. Imagine yourself a lawyer in court who needs to prove something. So when you don't understand the question, take a deep breath, take some time to just work through the question, look for the words that you understand, the keywords, and try and analyze the question for yourself. Okay, I know it's very stressful because it is a very difficult thing to do. Writing a literary essay is a difficult thing to do, especially if you have no one helping you. It's the exam. You're already stressed because it's the exam. So literary essays are difficult. So understanding questions will also be difficult. So what I want you to do when you don't fully understand the question, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and when you breathe out, you open them again and you look at the question anew. So you look at it with fresh eyes. Okay. And I'd like you to do that with everything that you struggle with in your exams, not just the lit essay, because English has a lot of difficult questions that you might not understand. And then once you get to the essay question and you look at it with your fresh eyes, why don't you then try and analyze each word in that question or in that statement that you have to react to, and try and write down for yourself, what could the question be? So in other words, give yourself an explanation, something simplified, because often it can sound very fancy and very verbose. There's a lot of words in there that you don't understand. So then try and make it easy for yourself to understand. There must be at least one word that you can relate to in that question. So that was the second thing you guys struggle with. Now, the third one is you guys don't follow the recipe. In the masterclass, Ms. Hamilton spoke about the PEE method. Sorry, it's just two P's, PEE method, yes. And today I'm going to add to that, and I did add it in your notes, but I want you to first just go through it with me. So I'm going to give you a recipe. And if you don't follow this recipe, you are really going to struggle. So I want you to look at not just reading the novel or play once, hopefully more than once. And then you look at the question. Do you understand the question? And if you don't, how can you better understand the question? And then the recipe that I'm going to give you guys today. English it sounds difficult, but for so many difficult things, there is a recipe you can follow. And today I'm going to give that to you guys. So with that in mind, those are the three things you guys struggle with, okay? You guys don't read the novel, so you don't understand your content. You don't understand the questions, and you don't follow the recipe. So I hope we are all clear on that. Now, hopefully after today's class, you will not struggle with those anymore. Now let's look at the literary essay. Okay, so you can now draw a line. We're now going to chat a bit about the literary essay because this is a pain for most people. And coming from me, who studied English literature, I know completely how terrible it is to write a lit essay and you have no idea where to begin. I absolutely know. And you're not sure if you can do it, and you're not sure if what you're writing is the correct thing. Trust me, I know how difficult it is. So let's work through this together. Okay. So the first thing I want you guys to do right now is I asked you to draw a line. Now I'm going to give you the purpose of a literary essay. Okay. So I want to tell you why we do literary essays. Okay. Lit essays. I'm just going to say short, lit essays. They are a form of interpretation of a novel or a play or any written work, any form of literature. And the same with poetry essays. They're a form of interpretation. Now, what lit essays do is one of two things, actually. And no, it's not for your English teachers to torture you with. I know you think we love giving you these long books to study because it absolutely just takes up all your time and you don't get a chance to do anything else. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We give you lit essays to do and novels to read for two reasons. Number one, reading expands your mind. You should know this by now. Reading is an amazing tool to get you to a level where a lot of human beings aren't. So if you're not an avid reader, then I suggest you become one. Then from those novels and plays we give you to read and to study, we ask you to write lit essays. Now, literary essays, like I said, they're a form of analysis, interpretation, a reaction to something in your book or your novel. What this develops is something that very few people on this earth have, and so many people need. It's critical thinking. So when you walk into your first job one day, whatever that may be, what is going to give you the edge over everyone else there, make you successful? It's going to be the ability to stay one step ahead of everyone else. And that is what critical thinking is. And also, if you choose to go to university, critical thinking will help you with your studies. It's a skill that you need, and you can implement in most places in your life, not just in English. You can translate the skill of writing a literary essay. You can translate to many different areas of your life. So that's the purpose. We want to expand your mind. Okay. And you have an even more difficult task, because where I would sit in my classroom and read the book with my learners and explain things to them, your task is made all the more difficult because your study is a self-study. In a way, it helps you grow a lot more. It develops you a lot more. It kind of throws you into the deep end. But in a way, it's also more difficult because it's going to take you longer to reach that point of superior growth. So I want you to remember that when you do self-study, and just with Brainline in general, it might take you longer to get there, but the eventual product will be so much more so much more amazing, because you've worked so hard. You've worked much harder than a student in a mainstream school. So just remember that. Okay, sip of my tea before I forget what I'm talking about. Right. So remember, any questions, write them down. We'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, so that was the purpose. So remember, we're trying to develop critical thinking here. That's going to help you in many other places in your life. Now we get to planning our lit essay. And this is where I want you to start really, really taking notes. So when you plan your lit essay, I want you to look at your handout. Let me just switch the screens over here. Okay, so I want you to look at your handout, how to write a literary essay. Okay, so how I like to plan is point form, like it is here. This is literally how I like to plan. Okay, now this, remember guys, planning with any writing task, planning is arguably your most important part, purely because planning sets the tone for the rest of your essay. Okay, so if you don't plan properly, the rest of your essay is going to suffer. Now, planning should never take you long, especially if you know your material. Planning should never, ever take you long. But it should help you structure the rest of your essay. And it's okay if your planning doesn't exactly look like your final product. It almost never does, but it will help you on your way to the final product. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, that's fine. So planning must look something like this in over here. So planning needs to look something like this. Let me just highlight it here so you know what I'm talking about. Right there. Okay. So when you plan, you can do a mind map if that's the way you like planning. I personally like planning like this because it helps me structure my thoughts. My brain works best in point form. So get to know which form works best for you. And then we are going to talk about procedure. Now, when I talk about procedure, I'm talking about how we actually go about writing the essay. Okay, so here it says it perfectly. Say it, show it, say it again. That is our procedure. In our beginning, we need to say it, and then in the end, we need to show it. In the middle, we need to show it, and then in the end, we say it again. If you're not 100% certain what this means, that's okay. We'll go through it together a little bit later on. And then that is your procedure. So let's get to planning a lit essay. Now, I'm going to plan one in front of you guys just so you can kind of see what my thought process is like. I'm going to use Romeo and Juliet as an example, purely not because I'm favoring the grade 10s, but purely because I think it's the example most people know. Okay, so for Romeo and Juliet, let me just change this screen share quickly. Back to myself, apparently. Okay, let me just change the screen share quickly. I want to show you guys, where is it? Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I want to show you guys this. This is actually for first additional language, but it's nice for you to get to know the play a little bit better. So I am going to just paste this in the chat box for all the grade 10s. But in here, they've got a wonderful question on Romeo and Juliet that we can talk about and plan on. So I just want to copy paste that so you can see where I've gotten it and that I didn't just go and make it up randomly. This is actually from the Department of Education. Or have I gone too far now? Apparently. Oh, the resource I just pasted, by the way, it's not a prescribed textbook or anything. It's called Mind the Gap for First Additional Language. Mind the Gap for First Additional Language. So when you do download it, please just remember that it is departmental. It is not your Brainline prescribed. It's meant to just supplement anything that's prescribed by Brainline. So to help you get a better understanding. Okay, I can't find it now, so I'm going to have to make one up. So just bear with me quickly while I switch you over to Microsoft Word, which is way over here. Okay, so the topic we are looking at today, let's make it something that's a very prevalent theme. Okay, so our topic is then for Romeo and Juliet, death was inevitable for Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so that's our topic. Now we need to go and plan it. I hope everyone can see. Let me zoom in a little bit so that everyone can see. Okay, so everyone can see. I've checked now. Let me just go back there. And now I hope everyone can still see. Let's see. Okay, I hope everyone can see. If you can't see what I'm doing in Word in real time, please just let me know in the chat box. I'll check it in 2 minutes. So we said we need to plan our essay. And for that, we refer to those bullet points that I showed you guys. Now, when we plan, it is very important. Remember, guys, I told you, you need to understand the question. So what I like to do is write the question in my own words. Okay. Okay, let's write it in a different way so I can make sure I understand it. Romeo and Juliet could not avoid death. Avoid death. Okay, so this is a very simple, easy topic. This is not your exam topic. It's just something that I'm using as an example. So I now went and I wrote it in my own words right here. I hope you guys can see. Right. Yeah, Romeo and Juliet could not avoid death. So I just wrote this in my own words, just so I could see that I understood the topic. Okay, now we need to plan it. So my thesis, my hook and my thesis statement, I'm just going to quickly write down what I think there. Whatever you can come up with over here, write it down. I don't care how silly it sounds, you write it down. So for our introduction, I'm just going to write intro so everyone understands. I need a hook, which is then a catchy phrase to start my essay off with, and very important, never leave this out, a thesis statement. Now, whenever I say the word thesis statement, it seems kind of like students want to run for the hills, and I can't understand why. Thesis statement is basically just the topic in your own words. So what I wrote down over here, that is what a thesis statement is. Please don't get scared and say, oh my goodness, this sounds so fancy now. I have no idea. I could never write a thesis statement. Don't ever say that. It's just the topic in your own words. That is literally all a thesis statement is. Okay, so we need to now write a thesis statement down, and this is the part where we say it. Okay, so thesis statement is the part where we say it. Okay, the topic in our own words, we put it over there. Then we have the first body paragraph. Now, ideally, you want to have 3 body paragraphs. So what I want you to avoid is I want you to avoid telling the story. Now, how do we do this? In our planning, we even start with this. We write a topic sentence. Okay, so now we need to go choose subtopics from this, our thesis statement, right? And just on a side note, I forgot to mention that you can also disagree with the topic if it is an argumentative topic and not a discursive topic. If it's an argumentative topic that states something like this, you can disagree with it if your topic sentences, your support is good enough. So if you can prove it by using events from the novel, that's good enough. So in our first body paragraph, we need to state a topic sentence. Okay, so a topic sentence here would be they were destined for doom, let's say that. Okay, and then I have to support my topic sentence using evidence from the play, and that would then be they were star-crossed lovers. Okay, they were star-crossed lovers. Right, so that is then my support. My topic would then be from the day of their birth, they were destined for doom. Okay, and you don't have to sound very fancy, guys. Remember, we don't expect you guys to sound like doctorate students at the university. All we want to see when you are writing this is you can understand, first of all, what you read, and second of all, you can discuss it or argue it. So just remember that. Okay, so my topic would then be they were destined for doom, and my support is an event from the novel or play, in this case, they were star-crossed lovers. And then I said we need to have 3 body points at least. So let's go over to body point number 2. And same thing, we have to have a topic and we have to have support from the play. Right. So now I want you to think of anything with your own set work, so your own novel or your own play, something that you could argue or you could talk about. Okay, so then let's look here. The second topic, let me quickly think of one. Their families feuded. Okay, silly example, but still, it encouraged their deaths, unfortunately. Their families feuded. Okay, so now for support, I can mention any of the cases where the families were feuding. For example, the fight between Mercutio and Tybalt. Guys, I'm just writing this from memory, so if I do make a few mistakes, I do apologize. You are more than welcome, if you know the play, to just help me write. But as far as I can remember, Mercutio and Tybalt fought, and then Romeo and Tybalt fought. Yes, okay. And then the last topic, and then everyone who wrote the mini essay for Romeo and Juliet is really going to roll their eyes now, because you will know this one too well. Let's think. I want to say fate was against them, but that kind of links to my first one. Fate was against them. Okay, so now my support needs to be really good, because I already kind of mentioned it here. So my support could be perhaps when the friar's message didn't get to Romeo, or Juliet woke up too late, like just a few minutes too late. Any of those could be for fate was against them. So now I have my 3 body topics, and now I have to conclude. So my conclusion is where we said we need to say it again. So if I need to say it again, it's going to look, sorry, let me just get to that. Where I say it again, you do the following. First of all, you restate your thesis statement. I know it sounds very silly, and it sounds so super obvious to have to say the stuff again and again, but just trust me, this is the recipe. This will show us that you understand the play. So you restate your thesis statement. Don't forget to sip your tea. Right. You restate your thesis statement. Excuse me. And then you summarize your topics or your points. You summarize your points. So if ever I say a topic or a point, please note that I mean the same thing. Topic and point in this case are the same thing. You summarize your points. And then lastly, this is optional in my opinion, especially for the younger grades. But if you're in the older grades and you'd like to start playing with this, you can close with a profound thought. For example, a rhetorical question. Romeo and Juliet were never able to truly live their lives because death for them was inevitable. Something or other like that. Or how many people actually get to live out their full and complete love without death getting in the way. Things like something silly like that. So if you're in the younger grades, we don't expect this from you, although it will score you a few bonus points, because it just shows us that you know your topic so much better than we've expected you to know it. But this is the general recipe, ladies and gentlemen. This is generally how we write a lit essay, how we plan. So the most important thing you start with, just to recap planning, is you have to start with the topic. And if you can put the topic in your own words, then do so. If you can tell me in your own words what's going on, do so. Then we start with our introduction. So you can do a hook or a catchy phrase. I'm going to just add that this is optional for the younger grades, for grade 8 to 9. We don't expect it from you, but it is obviously, if you are able to do it, it's bonus points, because it shows us how well you've developed. And then your thesis statement. So what we want from grade 8s and 9s especially is a proper thesis statement. Right, so that's your introduction. There's a few other elements that we need to add to the introduction, but we'll get to that in a second. This is the basic. This is just the bare minimum that must go into your introduction. Then we have to have 3 body points. Okay, 3 body points right there. Each body point needs to have a topic or a point, and then support from the play, an event from the play that supports it. Romeo and Juliet were going to die because this and this and this happened. So you need to refer back to the play. Okay, and then in your conclusion, you restate your thesis statement, you summarize the points you were speaking about, and if you can, you close with some profound thought, which I did not write there. Okay, all right, so that's basically how to plan your literary essay. Guys, remember, planning reflects the bare minimum. Okay, if you just go and literally put this into full sentences, then and you don't actually expand on it, then just remember your marks might not be as great because we still expect of you to give some sort of explanation. And if you're not sure what I mean, we'll get to that in just a second with the Peel method. So if everyone's done writing this down, then I'm going to start putting this essay together. Okay, so before we do anything, right? So before we do anything, what I want you to now go and you can draw a line underneath this, okay? You can draw a line underneath this, and we are just going to move on to the next part of our lit essay discussion. And then we're going to start with the Peel method, which I'll tell you about in just a second. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone has finished writing this stuff down. If I can just get to it. Right. So now let's get to actually writing down the essay. Let's get to actually writing down the essay. So let's start with a blank page. I'm just going to go between this blank page and this other page so that I can just remember my planning. In an ideal situation, you'd have your planning next to you during your exam time. Okay. So now we actually have to get to writing the essay, and this is where things are going to start getting getting a bit complicated, because now you have to take this and write a fully fledged essay on it. So, it's going to be very difficult. Let me just quickly stop screen sharing so we can actually get to all of our different things. Okay, so here's the blank document. And now this is going to be our proper essay. If I am going a bit too fast, guys, I will re-upload this, but I think that will only be tomorrow. So please don't think that you can just rely on the re-upload, because I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to upload this onto my channel and send out the link, etc., after the questions. So let's get to writing our essay. Okay. Now, this is where our planning and our blank document, our final piece, come together. So this is now putting it all together. And this shouldn't take you very long. And I don't expect of you to write down the entire essay as I'm going along. All I want you to see now is the process of taking this to this. So just bear that in mind. Okay. Just bear that in mind as I go between these two. Now, we said for the introduction, we need a thesis statement. But as well with the introduction, we also need the text and the author. So always remember that you cannot have a thesis statement without a text and an author. Remember, the planning is just the bare minimum. This that you see here in front of you is the bare minimum. So we start with our text. In the play. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I pressed the wrong button. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. And I know it sounds silly and it sounds very obvious, but please just make sure you add this into your essay because it gives your marker clarity on where your mind is. Okay. So in the play, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. And now, before I move on to my thesis statement, I'm just going to create a little hook or something just to catch my reader. And I'm going to do that by summarizing my text. Okay. So we see two young lovers. And now I'm getting an update at the bottom. Two young lovers at the start of their relationship. However, and now I need to go double check what my thesis statement was. These young lovers could not avoid death. Okay, so that is my introduction. That is my introduction. That is it. 2 sentences, finished. I'm done. Don't overthink your introduction. Perhaps 1 sentence more, summarizing the text a little bit more. But for grade 8s and 9s, we don't expect these massive summarizations. We do, however, expect you to be able to do a basic introduction. Okay. If you are not sure, look at your self-assessment page. That has everything you need on it. So that was my introduction. That's how simple an introduction is. Just want to double check. Yeah, everyone's still fine over there. So that is how simple an introduction is. I mean, how much easier could it get to do an introduction? We have our title and our author and a little bit of a summary of the text, as well as my thesis statement. Simple. Don't overthink it, guys. You'd want to make it more complicated than it is, and it really, really doesn't have to be. So just always remember that with your introduction, keep it simple, stick to what your self-assessment checklist asks you, and also look at the handouts that I gave you. Now we get to our body points, okay? So in our body points, I said we've got a topic sentence, which is a point on its own, as well as support from the novel. Now I want you guys to know the Peel method, okay? So the Peel method is basically where we write a point, what was our point here? They were destined for doom, okay? And then we have evidence. We wrote down our evidence. We have an explanation, and we must make sure that we link back to our thesis statement. So I'm going to put the thesis statement in yellow so we always remember what that is. Okay. Right. So when we mention a point, I'm going to show you how simple and easy this is. We take the point we wrote down here, they were destined for doom, and we combine it with our support, and we explain how this is relevant. So let's see how our paragraph is going to look. Point. Romeo and Juliet were destined for doom from the start. Okay. And then we said our support is they were star-crossed lovers. And then we can write. So that is our evidence here. Even in the prologue, they are described as star-crossed lovers. Okay, but now this is not enough. Okay, we need to now, this is the second E, explain. So let's give an explanation. How is this relevant? Okay, why is so important about this? So explain it to me. Remember, you are basically the teacher in this essay. You need to explain to me why Romeo and Juliet couldn't avoid death. Then we use our little transitional phrases, guys. Thus, okay, now you can sound fancy and use the word thus. Thus, these teenagers. Okay, now I need to think about my wording. You see, it's even me. I have to think sometimes, which is fine. This doesn't just come out. I said it was difficult. Thus, these teenagers struggle throughout their relationship to avoid the events that lead to their death. Okay. Now, this last L is link. Thus, Romeo and Juliet. Apologies, Romeo and Juliet could not avoid the eventual outcome. Now, look carefully how I keep using different words for my topic. Okay, the eventual outcome. They eventually die. We know this. Spoiler alert, I do apologize. I didn't mention it, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows this. We know that they eventually die. So let's just quickly look at this paragraph. I have my point. They were destined for doom from the start. Doom, which is related to death. Can you see? Even in the prologue. Now this is my evidence over here. Even in the prologue, they are described as star-crossed lovers. But that's not enough. I now need to go and explain. Thus, these teenagers struggle throughout their relationship to avoid the events that led to their death. You can even do this one better. And now that I'm rereading this to you, I'm thinking about better ways to explain this to you. For example, we all know that star-crossed means that their fates were not aligned from the day they were born. So perhaps you could even have said that their fates were not aligned from the day they were born. And as a result, instead of saying thus, I'm going to say as a result, so I don't use thus too much. Romeo and Juliet could not avoid the eventual outcome. That is a paragraph. I'm just going to quickly check on the chat box. Okay. So, now there we go. That is one paragraph. So whenever you write a paragraph, you do the P and the E and the E and the L. And the P stands for point. And the first E stands for evidence. And the second E stands for explanation. Second E stands for explanation. And the last one stands for link. Now, in your masterclass, Ms. Hamilton didn't speak about the link, but just remember that whatever you say always needs to link back to your thesis statement, even if you have to write a sentence in there like I did. So that's how you write those paragraphs. And you can go do that by yourself for all these 3 paragraphs. Okay. And please do remember, I saw in the chat box someone asked why we're doing Romeo and Juliet. It's just because it's the most relatable one, because many people, the majority of people, know and understand the basic-ish storyline of Romeo and Juliet. So you could kind of get the idea where I'm coming from. But I now want you to go and do this for your exam. Okay, follow this format. So when you write, please remember that every body paragraph must have appeal, point, evidence, an explanation, and a link. Okay, so make sure you have that. And then we get to a conclusion. Now, remember, guys, I said in the conclusion, we need to restate our thesis statement. So here you can use your creativity again, or you can just state your thesis statement outright. Considering the above, remember, we never say, I think, I say, my opinion. We never bring ourselves into these essays. We never use the first person. We always try and keep ourselves out of it. I know it sounds very contradicting. I just told you to convince me, and you're not even allowed to bring yourself in it. But just trust me on this one. Considering the above, Romeo and Juliet could not avoid death. Because, now we're going to summarize all our points, because they were doomed from the start. What was my other point? Their families feuded. Their families feuded. And, just so everyone can see, fate, or you can even say luck, was against them. Fate was against them. And then we said we end off with an optional profound thought. So you can say something like, will Romeo and Juliet be the only lovers who can never avoid death? Something like that. Okay. Will Romeo and Juliet be the only lovers to avoid death? Oh, sorry. To not avoid death. Okay. So please remember that just because I did one paragraph here doesn't mean that you can now go do one paragraph. Remember, we need 3. I'm only doing one for the sake of time, okay? For the sake of time. So you just saw how long it took me to do a lit essay. So now you need to go and ask yourself how long it's going to take you to do a lit essay and work it out in your exam tomorrow. Now we need to get to just quickly editing this. This shouldn't take long. You guys know that we go through the writing process, planning, first draft, editing, proofreading, final draft, okay? This should be nothing new to you, whether you are grade 8 or grade 10, okay? Just making sure you guys are still with me, whether you are grade 8 or grade 10. So when you edit it, you simply read through it. Remember, like I did just now, instead of using instead of using thus twice, I used as a result. And you could have worded this better, I saw, so I could have written that in there. And you just check for some spelling errors and you make sure that you added the peel in everywhere. That is editing. Now, you shouldn't spend too much time on editing, but you should definitely edit. Never leave it out, ever, ever. I see this a lot of times with just your narrative essays, or descriptive essays. You guys will write this essay and then quickly plan afterwards, and you think we don't notice. Unfortunately, if you don't plan adequately, then first draft, then editing, then final draft, it unfortunately reflects in your marks. okay? Because remember, the people who mark for Brainline are themselves teachers and writers. So we spot things like that very quickly, and we will give you criticism on, sorry guys, we will give you criticism on that. Because we do want you to improve, right? Okay, so that was editing. That was editing your literary essay. I don't mean to sound mean when I say it does. Your non-editing reflects in your eventual writing, and your non-planning reflects in your eventual writing. But you remember, you are at school and you are basically teaching yourselves. So it's very, very difficult. Oh, okay. Right. If you hear any noises in the background, it's just the dog from the neighbors who's trying to play with my dog, and she doesn't like that. Okay, sorry, moving on. So don't take it as us being mean. Please take it as, let's say, Spider-Man's spider bite. You can either get sick from it or you can become Spider-Man. You know, use it as a superpower. One or the other. That is how you should take criticism. And we will always try and say something positive to make sure that you can grow from it. Okay, so now we are at question time. So can I ask you any questions you have to ask me now? I will answer anything and everything you want to know right now. Leave them in the chat box. Okay, Aisha says, ma'am, I noticed your concluding sentence was a question. I lost a point in another subject for doing that. Okay, so very important, Aisha. First of all, did you prove your thesis statement before you asked the question? So what a lot of learners will tend to do is they'll ask the question, but they'll never actually answer a thesis statement. So the question is an optional thing. It's not something that I would suggest putting in if you're not exactly sure how to do it. So then if you are not exactly sure how to do it, just stick to your basic summarization of the points in your conclusion and then restating your thesis statement. Or yeah, you can do it either way as long as both are there. I'm not sure what subject this is, but in English, you can end with a rhetorical question to make your reader think, but you must have proved your thesis statement before. Okay, so the younger grades I'm talking about, sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. When I talk about, I refer to the grade 8s and 9s as my babies. Please don't take that personally. The school I teach at, I also teach grade 8s and 9s. So when I talk about grade 8s and 9s, those are the younger grades. When I talk about grade 10 to 12, those are the older grades. Okay, any other questions? Oh, goodness. What a question and a half. At the very top, yes. At the way top. In the middle, you can basically just rewrite the question if you want. But I find that learners who do that tend to skip the introduction. So then they think just writing the question or the title allows them to skip the introduction. It does not. The title is basically just your thesis statement, but it doesn't mean you can skip the thesis statement. Someone, they said who they were, who asked that question. Let me just double check. Akila. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. Akila. Your title goes way at the top, doesn't count in your word count, and it doesn't count for your introduction. As far as I know, you are not allowed to have any notes with you in your exam. Kayur, I hope that's how I say your name. I don't think you're allowed to have any notes. It is exam conditions. You should have an invigilator, and you should have exam conditions. So for my kids, that's cell phone must be packed away, no notes unless it's specified open book, and an exam is never open book. And also including no notes and no books whatsoever. Okay, any other questions, guys? Please, if it's even if you think it's a silly question, ask it. Other people might be thinking it. And no one can mock you for your questions that you ask. This is a safe space. Kayur, did I answer your question? Thomas sends a big smiley face. Okay, any other questions, guys? Now is the time to ask. There's really no such thing as a stupid question. Something you didn't understand. Nicholas, it is only a pleasure. So, guys, any questions you have now, please ask them now, because I don't know if anyone will be available between now and your exams. Okay, so no one has questions. Right. Shall we just wait? Guys, I know there's someone who's scared to ask a question. Please just ask it before we end the day. Okay, so the don'ts. Thank you. That's a very good question, Nosipo. Don't tell me the story. This is one thing that a lot of learners do. They tell me the story. Okay. How you guys often tend to tell the story is you start off with a point, and instead of just giving me evidence for that point, you just go into completely telling me what happens in the story. And the thing is, we don't want to see if you know the story. You should know the story. We want to see, can you debate about the story and talk to me about either the novel or the play's storyline. So don't tell me the story. The second thing that can make you lose marks is writing in all one paragraph. Remember, whenever you write a paragraph, it should be just one point. Like, for example, the introduction is just one paragraph. The body, point one is one paragraph. Body point two is another paragraph. So don't write in all one paragraph. Split your paragraphs up. Another don't is not editing your essay, excuse me. That can often leave you with, some people have said silly things, and then I think it's because they were just speaking or writing so quickly they didn't think about what they were writing. Like apparently Tybalt killed Romeo and not the other way around, and I think that was just you wrote too quickly and you couldn't see it. And in editing, if you took a deep breath, like I told you, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and then look at it again, re-looking at your paper with fresh eyes will help you avoid silly things like, Tybalt killed Romeo kind of deal, or the nurse gave them poison, something like that. So it's not always that you guys don't know the play or the novel. It's you guys just write too quickly and you don't edit your work afterwards. So that's another don't. Don't not follow the recipe. So I gave you guys a recipe now: introduction, body, conclusion, recipe, and it's also in your notes. So follow that recipe, it'll help you. Okay, and then Nosipo, make sure you plan beforehand. If you don't plan, that's a big no-no. Okay, does that answer your question? Oh, and also just add your word count in the bottom right-hand corner in brackets. So any other questions? You guys are welcome to ask as I speak. that really doesn't bother me. I'll get to each of them as I get a chance. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with one last question before we go, seeing as you guys seem to be more or less done with asking your questions. If there are any other things that you really, really struggle with, perhaps we can arrange for a little winter school during the holidays for specifically grade 8s and 9s. The senior grades have challenges of their own, in my opinion, and especially for those learners who this is their first year in Brainline. Like I say, I've been with Brainline for 7 odd years. So if you struggle with something else, perhaps we can organize a little winter school for the grade 8s and 9s, seeing as most of them are in their first year of homeschooling. So if you would be interested in that, you guys have my email address, or if you don't have mine, you have Ms. Hamilton's email address, and we can perhaps talk about a little English winter school, perhaps 1 hour a day or 1 hour every other day, just to cover topics that you guys really, really struggled with during the exams, because I will also be marking your exams. So I can also help you guys after I've finished marking them. So yeah, do you guys want to have a little bit of a winter school perhaps? Because this is really easy to set up. It's literally YouTube live stream. Costs me nothing, costs you nothing, and that's a win-win in my opinion. So if you have anything you want to be taught on, then let me know. Aisha, it is only a pleasure, my dear. I am a born teacher and I love my Brainline kids a lot. Even though you guys don't even know about us, we really care for you. And the Brainline child is a special kind of child that I never get to deal with in my normal teaching day. They're a lot more eager and a lot more hardworking than a teenager in a mainstream school. I think that's what makes them special. Oh yes, and I didn't even know. It's Eid Mubarak. I didn't even know. Happy celebrations to you guys. Okay, guys, so it is now 6 minutes past. And if you do not have any more questions, then feel free to leave the live stream. I will try my best to upload it at some point. You can see I can't sit still anymore. I will try my best to upload it and send out the link so you can go through it again. And then at some point, if you do want to have a little winter school, you can either ask Miss Hamilton or you can email me and we will talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to end this live stream now, and I hope it was productive, and I hope you guys have a wonderful time in your exam tomorrow. Remember to take deep breaths. Remember to not be too stressed. It will pass as well. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, slow out, and you will do well. If you've prepared well, you will do well. Okay, Nicholas there's 10 buys from Nicholas. Okay, guys, enjoy and good luck with your exam tomorrow. And let me know if you need anything else, perhaps a winter school, and enjoy, guys.